It's Off Exit 10, presented by Capital District Sport and Fitness.
Now we're rolling.
Now we're on business here. Yeah.
But one of my favorite parts about doing this is when I was in school, I did like really well in some classes and not so hot in the others. Like I've said this before, don't judge me, but like I never passed my math regis in high school. I just like wasn't into it. But things I was into.
The first one?
The second one.
Okay.
Tough.
Who gives a shit about the second one? The first one's really what matters.
Tough class. But things I'm into, I get into and I want to learn about. And I'm
totally fine.
And I feel like renewable energy is especially with the last infrastructure bill, it's like a hot topic now, or an important topic now to talk about.
It's a lot to talk
about. So I'm excited to delve in and learn more.
Yeah,
so we have Steve Swift on tonight. If you don't mind, Steve, just kind of let the people know a little bit about what you do and your background, and we'll get things rolling.
Yeah, sure. So I work for General Electric, and which will someday in the very near future become GE Vernova. So if you don't know, we're splitting GE, the iconic company of 140 years, we're splitting it into 3 different companies. So there'll be a healthcare company and there'll be a energy company, which is called GE Vernova. Vernova means new green. And then there'll be an aviation company, so, jet engines. So I head up the sales team. We have, we're about on a good day, about a $10 to $15 billion business. And, we put wind turbines all around the world. We operate in about 34 different countries. And so we're responsible for, with about 250 other folks of trying to find a way to put wind turbines in as many places as we can. So it's been in the energy industry forever, 1985. So I don't know if any of you guys were even born back then.
Almost.
But been out a long time and been with GE for about 26 years now. So
I was alive for that.
Cool.
Was alive for that.
And then were you working with wind turbines when you first started, or was that something that developed later on?
No, so this is my secret for the industry, right? So I started working in wind in 2005. But when I started my career, I worked for a different company out of Ohio, and I actually built coal plants. So I'm doing my penance to go clean up the mess I started.
Well, hey, you created a new job for yourself, essentially.
Yes.
So,
yes.
that's really what you were trying to do.
That's it. It's all about job security.
Yeah.
But GE obviously, has seen things going that direction where, we need to head to a place where we can have cleaner energy and help with the climate and pollution. Is that how you saw things when you were working in the coal industry and saw those downsides, or no, were you too much in it to see those things?
Yeah, back then, I don't think everybody actually understood what was going on. I think the science was starting to come out and people were talking a little bit about.
And we're talking what years are those?
Yeah, so this would have been 85,
Okay.
kind of 85 through 90. I think, I was, just starting my career, so I didn't know anything. I'm crawling through these big boilers that are burning coal and I don't know anything. So, you're kind of just doing your thing. Mm-hmm. But I think the research started to come out, and then I actually didn't leave, the company I work for was great, no problem. They actually are trying to do some things in renewable too. And, I came to GE just an opportunity to do something, kind of see the world, so, the company I work for, I basically kind of worked in the Northeast US. So if there's a power plant anywhere within like 500 miles of here, I've probably been in it. And, GE gave me an opportunity to do a bunch of things. So when I came to GE, I was actually working on coal plants for China. And then worked on the gas turbines, so combined cycle plants. So they're basically it's gas turbines, and you take a gas turbine, take the heat from it, make steam, spin a turbine, make electricity. So if you guys know, down in the port of Albany, there's just south of kind of the 787 bridge. Mm-hmm. There's you'll see 4 stacks down there. So that's a bunch of gas turbines that one of the utilities put in, and so, I got a chance to work on that, and then work on hydro, worked on solar, worked on nuclear. If it's made electricity, I got to spend some time on it in the last 26 years.
Yeah, because I feel like renewable energy is a term that gets thrown out. People read it every day in the news, but don't fully grasp what it is. So how would you define, or what are the different types of renewable energy that are out there and that this country is using?
So, there's even a debate in the industry, right, about what it is, but the broadest definition, nuclear is actually considered renewable, right, because it doesn't actually have any emissions. hydropower, so the big dams you see up at Niagara Falls,
Yep.
those kind of things considered renewables. Wind turbines, both onshore and offshore. So, most of what I do is put wind turbines onshore. But there's a whole industry in Europe and actually starting to grow in the United States to put them offshore. So there's 6 in the United States right now, 5 of them off of Block Island. And, they're supposed to start putting them in by the hundreds over the next few years. Then obviously solar, considered renewables. And then a bunch of emerging technologies, that people will start talking about hydrogen.
Yeah.
And actually taking renewable energy, making hydrogen, and then using the hydrogen for a lot of different things. Like you can use it to, in one of its forms, you can make this thing called green ammonia. And if I get too geeky, you guys just
go. We're learning, man. I'm in.
But you can actually make green ammonia, and you can use green ammonia to replace like diesel fuel, so for trucks and buses.
Okay.
So, renewable energy is going to expand every day of, how you make it, what it is, what's the sources, but those are the primary ones.
Is nuclear a safe option? Because people talk about that. I know there's, right, what's the fear with using nuclear energy?
Yeah, so, most of it, and again, first off, nuclear is very safe, right?
Yeah, because when I think of nuclear bombs. Like
Yeah.
that's the first thing that pops in my head. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not safe.
Yeah, and there's, again, to get real geeky, there's fission and fusion,
Yeah.
right? And depending on, which part of it, they haven't really figured out, fusion, which is if it goes bad, it stops.
Okay.
Fission, when it goes bad,
Yeah.
right? So you guys heard about Fukushima, remember what happened in Japan, right?
Yeah.
So, Japan and that whole problem wasn't necessarily about the nuclear, it was about the tsunami and all the backup systems that were supposed to protect the nuclear plant, right? So, here's a really simple analogy. I got a pump to keep stuff cool, right? So I'm gonna keep that pump running, that pump runs off an engine. Well, if you flood that engine, it turns off and the cooling water stops. So you start problems that way. So in simple terms, a lot of what happened over there was actually about some of those systems that were actually supposed to protect nuclear. The safety record of nuclear is unbelievably good. Obviously, when I think about it, I think about the context of GE, the United States, even Europe. I don't think about it in the context of Chernobyl and Russia and, those reactors. Let's separate those two.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have the same safety standards that everybody else has. We're actually right now trying to build into a definition of nuclear, small modular nuclear reactors. So there's a mouthful for you.
Yeah.
But we're trying to get
Is there an abbreviation for that?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. In our industry, there's an abbreviation for everything.
I mean, I feel like you have to. Like, eventually, you're just saying words, and you're like, "What am I saying?"
Well, that's like, listen, we're on a different scale. It's like people, they'll look at their exercise sheet at first and be like, what the hell is this?
So we call them SMRs.
Okay.
Yeah, it just makes it easier. So, but we're actually trying to build like this standard one that you just replicate 100 times. And one of the problems with nuclear has been that, utility, right? So think Niagara Mohawk, not that they would ever do it, but, they're trying to build a nuclear plant. It takes 15 years and it goes over budget by a couple $1 billion.
Yep.
And then you, the ratepayer, end up eating all that. So they're really, the difficulty is not necessarily the technology, but it's building them in a time frame and at a cost that's
I was gonna say,
competitive.
the cost has got to be the big thing.
How many plants do we have in our country, nuclear plants?
I'm guessing, but there's probably 75. Yeah.
So it's not a crazy.
No, but they're huge.
Right.
You think about it, the wind turbine, just to put it in perspective, one wind turbine puts out 2 megawatts, right?
Okay.
So 2 megawatts is enough to power 500 homes, something like that. A nuclear plant is typically 1,000 megawatts or 2,000 megawatts. And it's, so it's just like orders of magnitudes different,
Yeah. Right. And then you work with with the American Clean Power Association too?
Yep.
So talk to us about that and how that blends into your work with GE and just shifting things into more cleaner energy.
So the American Clean Power Association is really just an industry group of utilities, manufacturers, and kind of guys who like to build renewable plants, so developers. So it's an industry association. There's about 150 people on the board. I represent GE on the board, and what they do is basically try to go and make sure there's policies that make sense, make sure that there's an ability to build these things, help people understand the regulations, educate people.
So you're meeting with what? State governments, federal government, local, everybody.
Yeah. So there's President Biden and the administration just passed this thing called the Inflation Reduction Act, right, which is a big bill about renewables. So a lot of what we've been doing the last year is trying to get those policies shaped in a way that the industry can use them. And actually, so I probably met with, not individually, but in groups with 25 different senators. We were up on the Hill one day, which was, again, I say stuff like the Hill, like I'm like this big wig or something. I'm standing I'll tell you, I'm standing there on the Capitol steps, I'm like a freaking kid. I mean, I'm looking up, I'm taking selfies, So, but we go in there and we met, there was 100 of us, we had 150 different meetings through the course of the day with different congressmen, everyone from the number 2 person on the House of Representatives from Maryland, I think his name's Hoyer, to guys from Minnesota, to guys from Louisiana. So we spent the day doing that. So a lot of that kind of work. You guys heard the name Joe Manchin? You know who he is from West Virginia? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's the senator down there. We've met with him on several occasions. He's been a difficult person to get to agree with these principles.
Well, because it has to be tough, right? Because people have their different political agendas, and now you're coming in and you want to get these bills passed to help GE and to help our country have cleaner energy. And obviously some people are going to strongly oppose it. Why do people oppose this stuff? If you just think about climate change and how this all influences it, whether it's going to happen in our lifetime or not, something catastrophic, I feel like it's the inevitable path. Yeah. What makes people be like, you know what? No, we're not going to go this direction. We're going to stay with coal. We're going to stay with fossil fuels.
Yeah. The economy of West Virginia, just use that one. What do they do in West Virginia? They mine coal.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, you've got to balance out. And, there's no, it's funny. When you work for GE, we do so much stuff, right? You do everything from nuclear to gas turbines to renewable energy, all that stuff, right? So you end up with a little more balanced view of the world, which is, it's kind of a like all in. You can't put enough wind on the planet to power it. The wind doesn't always blow. Yeah. You could put solar panels, but you know what? The sun doesn't always shine. Yeah. Right? So this idea that you have to have a lot of different sources of electricity is something we buy into. Not everybody does. Everybody says, hey, I've been a coal miner. I just want coal. Right. I'm a utility. I have 50 coal plants. What do you want me to do with them? Just throw them out and take the loss? I'm in Houston, Texas, and I make oil and gas for a living. Do you want me to just go home and be unemployed while you guys build wind turbines? So it's not so altruistic. It's like, okay, let's just put wind and solar and put all these people out of work and dislocate the whole planet. It's not. It's I'd say the nuts who think that way, that you can just be that extreme.
Right. Well, I think that's our country now, right? Everybody, they need to be so extreme with their group. They're all the way right or they're all the way left. Yep. And anything that doesn't agree with that becomes combative.
Yeah. Right. And you fight with each other on principles.
No gray area. Like it's like everything's got to be black and white. It's like no, it doesn't. Like, no. There's a lot of gray area just in life in general. And then when you talk about politics and renewable energy and anything that we with the country there's that gray area where you got to find the balance of like, okay, there's some good stuff over here, some good stuff over here. Let's put it together and make the best stuff.
Yeah. I mean, think about you guys, right? How much, what percent of your operating costs here are electricity? 15, 20%?
Yeah. I'd say in between probably 12 and 20%, depending on the time of the year.
Yeah. So, fast forward and say, okay, you only have renewable energy and wind blows 30% of the day and sun shines 20% of the day. So you don't have any electricity the other 50% of the time. And that's not realistic, right? And then say, okay, put a battery in. Well, take your electricity and triple it. I'm not saying batteries triple it. I'm just saying if you try to just do renewables with a battery backup to get power 24/7, right? Your power price is going to go up.
Right. So we still need fossil fuels and burning coal to a degree.
We don't need to burn coal.
Fossil fuels.
Yeah, we need natural gas, but we don't. Eventually we'll get off of coal probably quicker than anything.
Right, and that's the thing. Because what's the goal? Getting to like a net zero emissions by what year?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 goals. Right, first is to stop, kind of the temperature rise on the planet, and like when you think about what they're doing in the United States for this Inflation Reduction Act, they're trying to basically say we'll get a 50% reduction by 2035 in carbon emissions.
Okay.
Yeah.
By 2035?
Yeah. And then, obviously continue the path, but, setting path, saying, hey, we're going to be net zero emissions by 2050 is, just, it sounds good on a
Piece of paper.
Yeah,
Right.
a piece of paper and a
You're saying
political speech. But
being realistic to get to that is going to take some more time.
I think it's going to take some technology too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's funny because you could put wind and solar up and probably get to 80%. But like right now we have just GE, right? We've got 25,000 wind turbines. By the time we get to the end of this policy, we need to put 500,000 up. So
how many we have right now?
25,000.
We got to put 500,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So it's not, and it's not that it's wrong. It's just, the pace, like the markets that we live in probably need to triple, which means, just a ton of work to do. So,
Right.
To me, setting these targets about 2050 are great, great aspirations, but how about we do this in bite-sized chunks, like make enough progress to demonstrate in 2030, we actually put 350,000 turbines up. And then in 2035, we're actually at 500,000. And then there'll be technology advancements and other things, and you just kind of keep going.
Right. Do you know the number? Like, what's the trajectory with the temperature rise on Earth over this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know we're trying to keep it under 2. I actually don't know what it is per year. I know I know that we have gone backwards actually as a world in the last 12 months. All the stuff going on with Russian gas and all that stuff. So they've actually had to restart coal in Europe, and so we've actually taken a couple steps backwards. But hopefully that's temporary. But I think what the projections are, and again, I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I think if you get above 2 degrees from kind of I'll say kind of 1990s levels, I think that's what it is. But you get above 2 degrees Celsius. The view is that you just get stronger hurricanes, you get more severe droughts, and it's always funny to hear say, well, we've always had hurricanes. Like, okay, we've always had hurricanes. But
that's what people will say. They'll say, well, look at weather patterns over the years. These things come and go.
Right.
And I feel like that's one of the arguments
to
this.
Definitely don't remember until Katrina, I don't remember the significant hurricane situations that we've had in the last 10, 15 years when in the 90s growing up or early 2000s. And now with obviously, temperatures going up throughout the world, it's like you do get, those extreme weather events, almost like, day after tomorrow type stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's scary to see that,
When people say you have the 100-year storm 2 years in a row,
Yeah,
Right.
Listen, like that might be a problem, like we had Katrina and then all of a sudden, how long ago, then we had another one like in New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
And then we had Florida recently. Right. It's like, these are supposed to happen every 100 years, not every 2.
Yeah. Well, the crazy part is, just try to be practical, right? Like I said, I'm not don't have a ponytail. I'm not trying to save the planet, just trying to do our part,
Yeah, right.
But the math, the last number I saw from the hurricane in Florida, it's going to cost like somewhere between 80 and 200 billion dollars to repair all the damage.
Yeah.
And then people are fighting about whether or not we should put up renewable energy. I'm like, am I missing something? Because if you ever hear people say, well, not everybody who smokes gets cancer, so I'm going to keep smoking.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes people are making that argument.
Right.
It's like, well, you might be wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, I might be, but I'm not sure we were given the right to go and roll the dice with the planet.
Yeah.
So what are the biggest pieces in this? Because did you work directly on this infrastructure deal that went in?
Yep.
What are the biggest pieces in there that are going to start to direct us towards this? Okay, more wind turbines or more electric cars or starting to drive these carbon emissions down?
Yeah. So there's a couple different things. There's something called the production tax credit, which basically says that you get a tax credit for every kilowatt hour or bit of electricity you make, right? So those incentives are in place that help accelerate the change, right? So if you guys use the example of gym we're sitting in, right? If I tell you, hey, your weights are great, no problem, whatever, you say, well, I'm never going to change because nothing's different, so I can keep burning gas, right? If I tell you, hey, I'd like you to go to the next technology, you say, well, I don't have any money to pay for that. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. But if I create an incentive that says, hey, I'm going to give you, some incentive to bring next technology that has more value to your customers, has more value to the planet, right? So the incentives are there to actually accelerate what would happen naturally, but would happen at a pace. I'll give you an example. Without the incentives, this market probably goes at, I don't know, something on the order of 5 gigawatts a year. Think about 5 gigawatts being the equivalent of, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 turbines a year. So remember, we're trying to get to 500,000, right? So the incentives are in place to hopefully get this market to go at 15 or 20 gigawatts a year, which is all of a sudden you're at, 10,000 turbines a year, just to put it in kind of equivalent terms. So that's the first thing. EV credits are in there, trying to get everybody off of gas, combustion engines and get them to electric vehicles. We can all have a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. We'll get into that.
We'll get into that.
There's incentives for both onshore wind, offshore wind. There's incentives for.
Can you explain the difference onshore wind and offshore wind?
Yeah. So if you think about you down off the coast of New Jersey or New York, right? First off, there's not much land, right? So a lot of times, and there's not really that much wind. So what happens is that in order to find a good renewable resource, or say really simply good wind, you go offshore. So you basically take these large turbines, they're a lot bigger, right? So if we're a 2 megawatt machine, I'll give you some dimensions that are kind of cool, but offshore, they'll put a 16 megawatt turbine.
Okay.
So just massive, like the blade on an offshore turbine is a 250 meter diameter, so 250 meters times 3 is like 750 feet.
Yep.
That's, kind of the blade like all the way across. Onshore, that blade is, right now we're probably shipping 140 meters, so it's like half the size.
Yeah.
So it's it's like a football field and a half length from tip to tip of blade.
7 football fields.
Yeah. Honestly, the stuff's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think part of it is just trying to find the best resource. So if you go to the middle of Texas, right? I don't know if you guys ever been to West Texas, but you know where the Panhandle is? You know what's there?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Just absolutely nothing. But there's great wind. So there's tons of turbines in Texas, to go power the Texas grid and go out of there. But, because there's infinite land kind of, and there's great wind, you put the turbines onshore. You put them in the Gulf of Mexico, there's no wind and it's expensive and you don't put them there. So it's kind of matching up where the good wind is with available land with, kind of the cost of doing it.
Why does Texas have its own grid? Why does Texas do a lot of things?
I actually don't know. But you guys remember the storm last year? It was called.
They were afraid. They're afraid they got some snow, right? And their grid's going to go down.
They were 4 minutes from from Texas going black. And,
really?
Yeah, and 18 days to start back up. 18 days if that grid goes off because they're totally isolated.
Right.
And again, there's all this geeky stuff that they call about black start, but it's like if you park your car in the winter, you need a heater sometimes to get it warm enough to start it. Well, think about that's kind of the grid in Texas. That if it goes down, you've got to preheat this thing. And you got to get that going. You got this big sequence. You got to.
That would have been all hell broke loose if that thing went down.
I mean, we had we talked to one of the energy traders. They said 4 minutes. And can you imagine how many people die in Texas if there's no electricity?
Yeah.
I mean, like it was. Yeah. And the crazy part is, so you got a gas turbine over here that needs a compressor, right? Compressor just pushes the gas to a turbine. Turbine burns it, makes electricity. Pretty simple, right? Mm-hmm. So all this winter storm came in and iced up everything, right? So they were starting to lose sources of electricity, so they started turning things off. Well, you know what they turned off? The gas compressors. So they turned off the gas compressors that fed the gas to make the electricity. I'm like, come on. Really?
only in Texas. Only in Texas.
I don't even, I just, so there's some really weird stories that, but you look at this stuff and so they're fixing that. But I think, honestly, one of the reasons they isolate is there's a little bit of, we're in Texas and we do things our own way. And the other thing is it's bigger than most countries.
Yeah.
So.
Texas is huge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, turning back off Texas. So what else is in this infrastructure deal that's going to help us get to this place where we're going to drop emissions?
So lots of stuff for solar, kind of the same kind of emissions, incentives. So, solar will probably go in at, if wind doubles, solar will go in at 4 times the rate. So just a ton of solar will go in.
Is solar easier to put, more cost effective to put in?
It's easier.
Easier, not necessarily cost effective?
It's, from the wind guy, right?
Yeah.
I'd tell you wind's better to put in. The solar guy would tell you solar's better to put in.
As far as building the infrastructure.
Simple. Yeah, it's simple. What
Not necessarily which provides like, quote unquote better energy,
Yeah.
but like which one is easier to construct and build, I guess
Yeah.
what you would say.
Yeah, so from complexity, like solar is like the equivalent of I put up a rack, I put on a panel, 4 bolts, and I go to the next one.
Yeah.
Right. So it's small, panels like maybe half the size of this desk.
Yeah.
They just put tons of them up.
Okay.
So it's real simple. The trouble is to get the equivalent amount of energy, you need twice as many solar panels because yeah, I could try to do this without talking about net capacity factor and a bunch of things that you don't care about, nor do I actually. But think about solar is like available 20% of the time.
Yep.
And wind's available 45 or 50% of the time. So you got to kind of net all that out and
Yeah.
say, hey, I got to do twice as much solar against. So solar's a little bit more expensive than wind right now. But it's also been, like when you look at your TV, right? How much was a 75-inch TV 4 years ago?
Oh my God, ridiculous.
Yeah, and how much is it today?
Like, not that much.
They give it away at Walmart,
Yeah.
right? Aisle 7, you get it for like $200.
Right. Like I was gonna get a new TV and I looked and I was like, oh, I can't, like these always TVs are super cheap. I can do this.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot like solar. It's actually a lot of the same kind of manufacturing and stuff. So the cost curve of solar is super aggressive because it kind of follows what electronics do. Whereas a wind turbine is, kind of big, heavy steel.
Yeah.
It's like these blades are like these massive boats, that they're kind of made of fiberglass. So it's hard to scale those costs at the same rate that you do, kind of electronics or what solar panels look like. So, so that's in the bill. Some of the cool stuff that, kind of next gen technology, batteries kind of straddle that. So there's incentives in there for batteries, and batteries just continue to be more efficient, so, they become a bigger part of things so that you can shift the power when you need it. So, when do you think, you need the most power? Think about it's a summer day. Like, when's the maximum amount of power usage?
Middle of the day.
Yeah, hot summer day.
Right. So solar matches that really well.
Yep.
But when you build so much solar, all of a sudden you've got too much solar at the peak, right? So at that 4 o'clock peak. So what do you do with it? And what it does is people just try to shift it. So they'll get 4 hours of battery storage. So you generate it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, store the battery, and then discharge it at 8 o'clock at night when there's no sun. So you kind of stretch how many available hours of solar there are. So that's, kind of solar and batteries go together. And then probably the one thing that is probably a generation away, but it'll be started, is hydrogen and ammonia. So
You brought that up earlier, so explain that.
yeah, so it's real cool. If you think about how you can make hydrogen from water, or you can make it from chemical processes. But if you take an electrolyzer, if you ask me how electrolyzer works, I'm probably going to go home. All right, but
Fucking mouth shut over there.
he's getting ready to. But it's a reaction to separate the hydrogen and the water, right?
Yep.
So H2O, right? So you separate the hydrogen and you release oxygen. So the hydrogen you use as a fuel. So it's you can burn it in a gas turbine. You can change its form. Like hydrogen come out, you can make green ammonia. Ammonia is a replace. We talked about you can use it to replace diesel. In certain forms, you can. There's just a bunch of different products. So if you make hydrogen or ammonia, all of a sudden, like you can fix the energy sector, you can fix the transportation sector, home heating. Think about everybody with these boilers. So again, this is a little bit of a dream because all the technology doesn't exist yet. They have I think the biggest electrolyzer right now is 2 megawatts. And again, just to put that in perspective, we need to get to 1,000 megawatt electrolyzer. So there's just a lot of work to scale the technology. But I think that's kind of the next gen of what will come out of it. And there's also incentives for SMRs, small modular reactors. So there's actually a lot of stuff in here that won't get pressed till the back end of the decade. But people will be doing the research and trying to advance the technology over the next 10 years.
Right. How long has at least your part in this been in the works? Long time?
For the bill itself, we've been working on it for about 2.5 years, but the incentives and the production tax credit actually go back to the 90s. So it's been an incentive scheme that has just kind of gone on multiple generations. So we've kind of fought this battle many times since, certainly over the last 20 years.
Yeah. How much, I know this is like out of your field, but okay, so on the other end, in terms of like with emissions, like people and deforestation and,
Yep.
and how much do you think about that and that impacting driving up carbon levels?
Yeah.
And all these fires in California.
Yeah. I think it's it's all connected, right? You look at the droughts, you look at deforestation, you look at, what's it, Lake Mead outside of Vegas, right? Is it Lake Mead? Yeah, that's basically like empty. They're finding.
I'm going to trust you. You've been around the country a little bit more than I have.
But you go down south of Vegas, like, is it Lake Mead or Lake Powell? I forget. But, they're finding things that have been buried 50 years ago, 100 years ago, like finding relics, cars, unfortunately a few humans, So the water levels haven't been this way in forever. So I kind of think they're all connected.
Didn't they find like footprint somewhere, like a dinosaur footprint that was like buried underneath something because of like the water levels got so low?
Yeah.
Like, I think that might have been in Texas. I think.
Yeah. But have you guys seen the stuff on the Mississippi? So, Mississippi is huge for hauling everything up and down, right? Barges, tugs, everything. The water level's so low right now that the barges are stopped. So,
crazy.
You think about just how important it is for the commerce, and just all the things that go north to south from the Gulf all the way up to the northern states and everything that's fed off the Mississippi. So there's a lot, and I think it's all connected.
And is this the first time they've been this low? Or at least in a long time?
Certainly a long time. Yeah, I don't, I'm sure there's, maybe been a short time, but I think the historic levels, I just, it's one of those things. Again, can you afford to be wrong? We could all make an argument that it's temporary.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, the drought in the West, I think, has been going on for 10 years. When do you stop calling it temporary?
Right. Yeah. But that's the thing too, is like, why take the risk?
Yeah.
If we can prevent it from continuing to happen, like, let's do that instead of trying to like, it's happening, but it's gonna stop.
This episode of Off Exit 10 is brought to you by Drink Alchemy. Fatigue and brain fog affect us all, destroying everything we pursue. Whether as an athlete, artist, creator, or entrepreneur, our mind holds the key to performing optimally. By combining the most potent organic nootropics found in nature, Drink Alchemy delivers sustainable boost to creativity, memory, energy, and focus in one epic beverage. Stop pumping your body full of excessive amounts of caffeine and unknown proprietary blends from other energy drinks, and get clean energy from Drink Alchemy's natural nootropics like lion's mane, L-theanine, and caffeine from green tea. Used by Olympians, D1 athletes, MMA fighters, and entrepreneurs, Drink Alchemy has become a huge part of my daily routine, making sure I'm functioning optimally during long days of coaching athletes, running CDSF, and getting in quality workouts myself. So do yourself a favor and ditch the energy drinks loaded with caffeine, other stimulants, and who knows what else, and head over to drinkalchemy.com today. Live with your mind unbound and save 10% off your order by using code CDSF at checkout. That's drinkalchemy.com, promo code CDSF for 10% off your order today.
How do you guys think about it? I mean, seriously, because it's like, I live in the industry, right? You get a perspective, it's my job. But, how do you guys think about the environment?
I feel like I haven't.
Not enough.
Listen. Yeah, not enough. Listen,
I'll be honest, not enough.
I'm in my early 30s. I went through my 20s as just like a very selfish human being.
Yep.
And now we have a kid on the way. So we're going to have a kid in February. And really, since then, it's had my brain thinking, past more than my lifetime. My brain's never went there yet. And I'm sure those thoughts will become even deeper, as our kid's born and grows. So it's definitely, sparked me to think more about, okay, like how are we going to impact not only when I'm gone, when I'm going to have a kid, and what's the world going to look like then?
Yeah.
And then also, though, just news is confusing, right? It's like you CNN and then Fox and then this and then that. And your brain's just like, what's right, what's wrong, who's not? I feel like that makes things very difficult for a lot of people, whether their brain lives at an extreme end or they just get confused.
Yeah, or inundated with, the taglines and how the media paints people.
You're just trying to get, what's it called? Like clickbait.
Clickbait, yeah. And like for me, like I definitely haven't paid attention enough. I mean, I pay attention to the point where like I know basic things, obviously global warming, like that kind of stuff, paying more attention to like the EVs and all of that kind of stuff, solar a little bit more. I had a friend that worked in solar panels, so I would paid attention a little bit, but definitely not enough to the point where I can firmly say like I know what I'm talking about when I do it. But I do believe that there is things that need to be done because it's November, it's going to be 70 tomorrow. Right? That's not normal in New York State. So like I'm aware of things, but I'd say I'm not I don't pay attention enough as much as I should probably to it. So that would be my assessment of it.
I think though, one of the things that everybody's got to be is practical, right? Because, listen, if you say we created a problem, what I can tell you is that over the last 100 years, right, we've done some probably tough things, right? You think about, a picture of Pittsburgh in the 1970s in a steel mill and just emissions all over the place. You go to Beijing, China, and you basically want to wear a mask every day before COVID. There's just soot on the ground, right? So you look at that and you're like, oh my God, what have we done? And go to the other end. How much have we advanced medical? How much have we advanced just quality of life, brought people out of poverty? So it's like, again, it's easy for everybody to be at the extremes. It's getting enough people to just have a practical conversation.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. Not getting offended when somebody doesn't say how you think or how you feel, but being able to talk things out. Like, yeah, we're in such a service industry, right? And we really do our best to not bring up politics in conversations. Like when it starts to trend that way, I'm like, detour.
Yeah. How about those masks?
Trying to take some sort of detour away from that conversation.
Please, but sometimes you try to detour, and you miss the detour, and it goes there, and it's tough. So I'm just trying to think. I've had conversations with people in here who seem to be opposed to renewables in the past. And I can think of one argument with, well, if we change to a bunch of EVs and we only do electric cars, how are you going to do enough charging stations? Aren't we using fossil fuels to make these things and make the batteries?
What are we doing with the batteries?
So then, so then this person says this, and I go, I don't have enough knowledge to continue that conversation, so educate me, please.
Yeah. Well, first off, they probably don't have enough either.
100%.
They've just taken a position. And what? When we make a wind turbine, we actually have a big blast furnace to make the flanges for the towers. So we actually pollute to make wind. Now, you're making an investment for a return. Right. So
that's a good way to put it.
So 400 homes for the next 30 years will be emissions free. Right. Now, in order to get there, I had to make an investment to actually build a steel tower.
Right.
So it's like, okay, and people will tell you, this is my favorite. It's like, oh no, if whatever emissions you generate to build a wind turbine is greater than the amount they save. I said, so you're telling me that a 3-hour process generates more emissions than the next 30 years for 400 homes.
Yeah.
I was like, could you do that math equation for me?
Right.
Because I'm struggling. I'm not that bright. I need you to do the math.
I can't do long division.
I got a calculator. I can use my iPhone. So there's a little bit of but I'll bet over 15 years that thing has been posted on Facebook at least 25 times. So I'm like, come on, guys.
But that's the trouble too. That's how people consume their news in these quick, clicky headlines. And if they're on Facebook, they're probably only following people that are like that. So they're only seeing stuff that they think.
Yeah.
And when they do see something they don't think, they go, unfollow.
Yeah.
Or that's not real.
That's not real. Fake news.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just, it's one of those things that's like, one of the reasons I came down to do this is like just have a rational conversation with rational people about, it's cool. I mean, I love being part of the industry, and there's some things that we haven't done well, and there's things we'll do great, and that's
any industry.
Welcome to business,
right? Any industry that there is.
And I hope we did a hell of a lot more good than we did bad. And when we did the bad, I hope we cleaned it up. But I think to a certain extent, people just don't want to believe that what they did yesterday is what they're going to do tomorrow. Like, why should I change? Why should I do anything different than I've done my entire life? I'm like, man,
you got a long ways to go.
Yeah.
No, if you
glad you weren't innocent.
If you did that, you never would have walked.
Yeah.
Like you'd be laying on your back your whole life. Let's take it back to just like the simplest of terms. If you never change, you never crawl, you never walk, you never run. You'd be laying on your back your whole life, like, oh, somebody help me.
Yeah. But also having a discussion that says, hey, you know what? I bought a beautiful house, somewhere, and somebody put a wind turbine up, and I got to stare at it for the next 30 years. So he's against wind. Not wrong. I mean, but what's the alternative? Well, if you could put a coal plant in somebody else's town and then bring the electricity to my house, that would be awesome. Because that's kind of what we do today. It's like, why you have a little bit of compassion for people. It's like, look, I don't want to screw up your view. I don't want to screw up your house. I don't want to put solar panels, where you can't use the land to farm and all that stuff. But you got to make choices. You got to look at alternatives. And I think a lot of people are unwilling to consider. I'm not judging anybody. I just say I think you have to look at the alternatives and say, hey, what's what's the best approach? Not the perfect, there's no perfect approach. What's the best approach to solve whatever problem you have? And I think the more you can have rational conversations with people, and get out of the extreme stuff and just think, okay, what do you want to do? What do you think?
Right.
Yeah, I think once you have that conversation, it's a lot easier to work your way to that middle. But both parties have to be willing and receptive.
Yeah. And if you came in and you said, I hate renewables and it's a total waste of time, and you're all a bunch of greenies, you're all a bunch of idiots.
Yeah.
I was like, there's probably nothing I'm going to do to change your mind.
Right.
If you're that visceral about
Yeah, I think it's knowing when you're at that point with somebody too. Like, okay, tough stuff.
It's like
Tough crowd,
It's like I'll go hit the weights.
Yeah.
How'd the podcast with Steve go? I did about 12 sets of bench press.
We talked for about 30 seconds, and then he was like, "Oh, this isn't my conversation. I'm gonna go bench."
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about fossil fuels, using that, you make that investment to get the bigger return. What about that in terms of electric cars and charging stations? Like, how long of a process is this to get to a place where potentially everybody is using electric and the grid can support charging stations, so we can build enough charging stations?
I'm trying to drive my car till it dies, and I can just get.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
It's not wrong.
Like, do you have an EV?
No, we're looking hard at one.
Okay.
Yeah, but no,
But
what I drive. I drive two big polluting cars.
But you will, and you want to, and it's something okay.
Yeah, we're actually looking at the new. Have you seen the new Chevy Blazer?
The EV one.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the like trucks. I don't know if I've seen the Blazer.
Yeah, but the reason we haven't done it is just the mileage. We travel a little bit. Going back and forth to colleges and different things. So the range was like 200 miles. So they finally have a decent sized vehicle with a 350-mile range. So it kind of opened your mind a little bit.
But this is a real thing. Other people are probably thinking too of, well, I can't get one because of where can I pull up and charge it?
Yeah, listen, I'll be honest. If you told me that I'm going to drive to North Carolina, I'm going to stop 3 times for an hour and a half each to charge.
I feel like that.
I'm going to get in my Tahoe and fill up my 30-gallon.
Right. Well, how do we get to a place where that's more of a viable option for people to live their lives and drive an EV?
But it's coming. I think that, again, you got to let technology advance. And sometimes I think you can push technology too quickly.
Right.
And ask people to make all these compromises, and then you just kind of get people stuck in
like who pulled the trigger first? Did California? Didn't they lay a law down for
2035?
Yeah.
Is that realistic?
Yeah, well, they say, again, I don't have the expertise, but I got certainly the opinion that they say it takes like 15 years to switch over a generation of vehicles. So like when you hear like Ford and Chevy say that, hey, in 2035, we won't make combustion engines, by then. So I think it's going to take about 15 years to change over some really, really high percentage. And putting charging stations is not like super complicated. I think you might have some challenges of where, because you say, hey, look, every rest area that you drive to, right? Am I going to put an EV? How long does it take to charge? Like people will take a 5-minute break, right? You go in, you hit the bathroom, get a soda.
But people's patience are quite low.
Like I remember talking to somebody who I think they have a Tesla in here, and she said she was low. She went to the mall. They have charging stations there. Went to the mall, went in to grab a coffee from somewhere, went somewhere else, grabbed something to eat. Didn't sit down to eat.
Yeah.
Just walked around. It was like 10, 15 minutes, came back out, and their car was like halfway charged.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
I want to be able to be as fast as me filling up my gas tank.
Yes. Yeah.
But when she said that, I was like, okay, we can't be that far off.
No, because you can, the around town car, like the 13-mile commute back and forth. I mean, it's perfect. All the technology is there.
Mm-hmm.
People would drive, 4 or 5 hours and they're 10 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
We're not there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we shouldn't stuff it down their throat because, again, I think sometimes you can, again, do more harm than good.
Yeah.
Are any other countries there in terms of electric vehicles?
I think there's some that are more advanced, but I don't think anybody's really there. Yeah. But, there's a bunch, somebody told me this story the other day. If I asked you who, and I don't want to pick on a company, but I'll just say, what industry is the most worried about EVs? It's the soft drink industry.
Explain.
So you're driving down the road, right? And I'm on my way out to Massachusetts, right? I stop over and I stop in to get gas. What do I grab? Grab a soda.
A soda, yeah.
How much is that soda compared to the one you buy, at ShopRite?
So at least $1 more.
Right.
If not more.
Right. So, who's going to lose the profits if you don't actually stop there? So really crazy stuff you hear. It's
how much you think about that? So you're trying to accomplish what you want within your industry, but then you have other industries that are going to lose profit from that.
Or jobs.
And jobs.
Yep.
I mean, that has to be in your head as well to try to get the stuff to pass.
Huge, huge. You know, one of the biggest examples, trying to think if there's any place around here, but just pick any town USA, and they got a big coal plant, and that coal plant pays $30 million a year in taxes. Those taxes go to your future kid, paying for their school, you know, your folks, you know, assistants, you know, all the things that taxes go for. I'm shutting down the coal plant, putting up a wind turbine, they don't pay near as much taxes, you know, because just kind of with the construct of the industry, right? And again, you know, one side will say, well, we'll just have to adapt. I'm like, what does that mean? You know,
Yeah.
like so those kids don't go to school,
Yeah.
or the quality of their school falls off. And it's like, again, it's a complicated thing,
Right.
which is why you need people engaged and smart, and you spend the time trying to educate people. And you know, if I told you that, hey, you're an electric utility, you got this big coal plant, and you know what, I want you to shut it down. And I'm going to allow you to write off financially that, you know, what's left of the value, right? The accounting of it or whatever. And I'm also going to give you an incentive to help you to retrain workers. And I'm going to give you an incentive to go and replace the tax revenue. It's a much more compassionate way. And by the way, if renewables are a little bit cheaper than the coal plant, why not just take that money and go make a normal transition in these towns so that people, like, we don't have winners and losers.
Right.
You know, so again, super complicated. You think about just that conversation and try to execute that with the right and the left and a bunch of people, and you know, it's mind-numbing.
Yeah, that's tough. So you're sitting in meetings with Democratic, you know, politicians and Republican, and you're trying to talk about what you just did to us.
Yep.
That's got to be.
Yeah. It's fun. Yeah.
You enjoy it.
I do. Listen, I love trying to solve complicated things. You know, I mean, you know, when you're this much, right? You're you're 1% of 1% of 1%.
Right.
But, you know, one of the cool things about working for GE, right? People listen to us, you know, and they allow us an audience, right?
Right.
So you get a chance to go and, you know, we had an all-employee meeting the other day, and, you know, we're going through a little bit of a tough stretch financially, and we're talking to the whole team, and we got, I don't know, there's 10,000 people in the business, and we're going through a big restructuring. So, you know, they ask everybody, like, kind of, why do you do what you do? And I said, you know, there's a Lady Annabelle song, you know, some country music fan, but there's a line that says, hey, I want to do things that matter, I want to make a difference. And it's like, that's the coolest part of this industry that you'd never, you know, I didn't get into it for this, but, you know, 15 years later being in it, you're like, you know, I think I can, you know, when I get to the pearly gates, to say I did something that mattered, you know?
Yeah, I think that's important. I think even now with, like, you know, younger kids entering the job market, the generation below us, so I think they really value, like, you know, doing something that they're morally proud of and feel like they're making a difference. And you know, over, you know, wage or over other qualities. Like, they want to have, you know, see the value in what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm proud of them, you know. You guys ever watch Shark Tank?
Yeah.
You ever see, like, how many people they have a business and a cause? You know, it's like, hey, I'm going to donate 1%, or what's the sock company?
Bamba?
Bamba.
Yeah.
You know, like, that all started on Shark Tank, and they actually, like, donate part of the profits.
Yeah, I got Bamba's app right now.
You
Yeah.
know, but it's like stuff like that where you can connect both. You know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. Did you meet with Biden during this at all?
I didn't. Nope.
Did not.
Nope.
Just other
No.
people.
I got to go stand on the White House lawn with a couple thousand folks and celebrate.
That's pretty cool, though.
That was cool. Yeah. I will frame in my house an invitation from President Biden to attend the celebration. I mean, again, I was a kid at Christmas, you know, I'm like, all right, this is all right. This isn't my normal day, you know. A bunch of people came up, Schumer came and talked, and Pelosi, and, you know, got very political, which, you know, I'm not political, but,
Right.
you know, I would tell you that, you know, and I'm not here to represent Democrats or Republicans, I'm actually independent, you know, but he actually stood up, took his jacket off, and he gets painted in a bad way, right? Like, kind of a, you know, the press does a tough job on him, and he earns it in a lot of cases too. But you stood up and you actually believe he was doing it because he cared, which, you know, ultimately, like him, dislike him, Republican, Democrat, right? People do what they believe in, that's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is like being able to speak empathetically, or being able to at least, you know, I guess even if you're faking it for it, like at least seem like you care. Like it makes a big difference than, you know, you're just saying words.
Yeah.
no emotion or anything like that.
Yeah, I've gotten to meet with a couple of politicians, in smaller groups, and we were out with Matt Mead, who was the governor of Wyoming, and we were out trying to build a big wind farm right outside of, I forget the town. So he comes out to the Pathfinder Ranch, right? Well, the ranch, you're thinking it's the Ponderosa, right? There's this big bunk room and stuff like that. This is like a 25-room house, and you're in the middle of nowhere. So, we're staying at the house with the guy who's kind of
Yellowstone,
yeah, it's not too far actually. Where your nearest neighbor's like 300 miles away.
Yeah.
So so Matt comes out and he's like, well, let me look at the plans. So we break out the plans for the wind farm, and they're on the pool table in the house. It's like, all right, this is not my impression of a normal politician.
Right. Yeah.
And then he says, hey, I got extra tickets tonight. It was the NCAA horse riding championships or whatever. He's like, come on, hang out with me. So we hang out in his box. We're eating hot dogs, drinking a beer, watching this thing, talking to the governor of Wyoming. It's like, all right, it's not my normal day. So it's like I said, I'm a geeky engineer that started, like I said, building stuff in the field and get involved at a different level and talk to some of these folks. Some of it, is mind numbing and it's exactly what you think it is.
Right.
You show up and you get the political thing, and I got yelled at by one of the senators. I won't say his name just in case by randomly he comes upon this. But we were talking about offshore wind and these crew vessels, right? So to put up an offshore wind turbine, you have these things that they're called jack-up barges, but it's a giant barge with these 4 legs. You stuff them in the ground, and it's a giant crane, and you lift the turbine up. I mean, these things are like 70 tons or something. It's like immense what they have to lift. So he was talking about, he wanted those ships, which are all built in Europe, to be run by American folks out of the Gulf. It's the equivalent of you drive here with your bus, you hand it to me and say, hey, I don't care, you can drive my bus, I don't care. I know it's mine, but I'm gonna let you run it. I'm like, that's not really how it works. And I said, how do you think about safety? Oh, these guys know what they're doing. I'm like, so I'm gonna come and bring my $100 million thing. I'm gonna give it to you guys. I have no idea who you are. And you're gonna go use it for a couple months and then give it back to me because a politician said so. So he and I got in a fairly, not a heated argument, but you're like,
A little back and forth.
Yeah, a little back and forth, and you kind of start like, I'm talking to a U.S. congressman. I'm getting a little red in the face. I think I'm gonna stop talking.
This episode of Off Exit 10 is brought to you by Anchor and the all-new Anchor Pro, crafted to endure the most high-performance workouts without the high cost and space requirements of a standard cable machine. Named the best portable cable machine by Men's Health Home Gym Awards, Anchor provides the full functionality of a cable machine in one small space-saving unit. Designed with user-friendliness in mind, Anchor can simply be attached to any squat rack or placed on any wall in your home gym using its intuitive sliding track mount. With up to 65 pounds of resistance, Anchor is built for high speed and controlled exercises alike, from cable presses and rows to chops and lifts. The Anchor has been a game changer for us here at CDSF, and now you can enjoy the same professional quality cable machine in your own home gym by heading over to anchortraining.com and using code CDSF10 for 10% off your order today. Get all the benefits of a cable machine without the high cost and installation fees. Enjoy the portable luxury and space-saving performance of Anchor today by going to anchortraining.com and using code CDSF10 at checkout. That's anchortraining.com, promo code CDSF10 for 10% off your order today.
Okay, what is your academic background?
Yeah, I'm engineering degree from the University of Delaware.
Because it's almost like you have your engineering brain, but then you got to flip into just like this social negotiating.
Yeah.
Did you ever see yourself doing something? Yeah.
Hell no.
I feel like that's a whole nother realm.
I said the first time I went and met with a bunch of politicians, it's like, it's like I'm stammering, and I'm still not very comfortable with it. But although you guys would be proud, during COVID, we had a Zoom meeting with Chuck Schumer. So I'm in flip flops, gym shorts, a shirt and tie, and
Classic Zoom attire.
Classic Zoom attire. At least you had pants on.
I did. I thought that was important.
Yeah. Just in case.
Some people didn't take that.
Wasn't there a guy that got caught
I think people were doing some,
there was
not pleasant things.
Not pleasant things
in
on meetings.
meetings.
I'm pretty sure one guy got up and didn't have pants on, and, in a meeting, a very important one. And I was like, "Ooh, that's not good."
Yeah. When you guys have a certain person come train here, ask her about the first Zoom meeting with the staff of the place she works.
We will. We will. And who had pants on and who didn't.
And who had a towel wrapped around their head on the Zoom meeting, not realizing the camera was on.
Yes.
Wasn't her.
Because that had to be a weird time for you because you travel frequently.
A lot.
Correct? And then how long was that shut down from during the height of COVID?
Yeah, so a normal year, I know I fly 200,000 miles, so travel 40, 50, 60% of the time.
Yeah.
And I was home for a year and a half. I mean, it's bizarre. I've been on the road my entire career, it's like 1985, married my wife, said, hey, I'll be back in a couple of days, came back 3 weeks later, she's a saint. So if you, so when you go from a whole career, like 30 something years of doing that to, here's your room, here's your computer, stare at that screen 14 hours a day.
Was that anxiety provoking or weird? Or?
Obviously made me nuts. I like people, in case you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
And this idea of, Zoom is cool and Microsoft Office, all those tools are great. And actually it's going to give the world a little bit better balance.
Agreed.
Because the 3 weeks before COVID hit, I was in Singapore, Barcelona, Florida, Chicago, California, and it's like, okay, when it first hit, I'm like, I could take a break, but 6 months later, I had enough. Yeah, but I think it'll make the world a little bit more efficient. Not you don't have to travel all the time.
Right. I think the balance of, I have a client in New York City who works for a bank, and they still haven't gone back to full, because it's like you guys are getting stuff done.
Yeah.
You're getting the work done. It's more cost effective.
Yeah, on a personal level, it's gonna help our family dynamic greatly because it's Sam's job now. She can work from home for the most part and be very flexible when she goes in.
Yep.
Which now, me still needing to be here a decent amount of hours during the week is going to be huge to allow us to start our family and have.
Well, you guys know how hard it was keeping the business going during COVID, better than anybody. My God, talk about adapting.
Gyms were a tough industry. I would think gyms and restaurants and the recreation, especially New York State, was a challenge.
Yeah. One of the things we worry about, though, is, it's hard. A lot of what we do is collaborative, right? You've got 10 engineers in a room trying to design or fix a big problem. And, it's hard to do that over teams. There's an element of that. So we've been encouraging folks to try to get back a little bit more, 3 or 4 days a week. But still, realize that young moms, dads, sick parents, right? People need more flexibility.
I think that's the thing, flexibility. I think we still need this human interaction and in-person component. I think that
You can't just be staring at a screen all the time.
it's in our nature. There's a reason why, I've said this before, but we'll never do, I say never, I don't think we'll ever do a Zoom podcast because I can't look at you, read your emotions. It's not the same level of experience.
I don't know what you got written in front of you, or typed on.
Or if you have your pants on or not, it's like I got
that's a visual I wouldn't want to do. That'd be a little bit of a nightmare.
But yeah, it's definitely a good thing. I think the person I mentioned, my client, they now are send out a memo saying we would like you to be in the office 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah.
But even his boss was like, listen, unless it's an important meeting, twice a week is fine.
Yeah. And we're not trying to be militant about it either.
No,
it's but don't abuse it.
Don't abuse it.
Yeah.
It always amazed me that everybody couldn't come back to work, but at 8 o'clock in the morning, all the streets are full.
Yeah.
I'm like,
what are we doing here? Y'all going to Starbucks? What's going on right
so,
here?
it's good. It's good. I think there's some good things too. We went through COVID and, my family, they're all over the place, right? And then, we got into a little bit of every couple Sunday nights, Sunday night game night, and probably connect with the kids more. But, also went a year and a half without seeing my son because of COVID restrictions and different things.
Yeah, because he was living down south.
Yep.
Yeah.
And between the restrictions in Florida and the restrictions in New York, you'd have to take a month off to quarantine.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know about you guys, but taking a month off is probably not in the cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. How many countries have you been to? Do you even know?
25. Yeah.
What do you have time to just soak in the country, or no? It's just meeting, boom, plane gone.
Yeah. No, it's probably the worst example, right, is Australia, right? So it's 30 hours door to door to get there. So I think I left Saturday for Australia, get there Tuesday, and I was back home Friday night.
Steve.
It's insane. So you land, go to a really nice hotel to shower, get out of the shower, go right to work, which is kind of normal. It's 14, 16 hours a day between meetings and catching up with the team that's there and all those things, a lot of stuff going on. And then, but when your family's back here, you get back on a plane. I was said the most insane was I was in South Africa and then I was in Kenya, and we had done a day of volunteer work in Kenya. So we were in Kibera, which are literally the worst slums on the planet. We, as a company, sponsored some things. We were working with building latrines, digging holes for folks. I mean, like, think about a place where a tin roof is how you take your light bulb and you wire it to your tin roof, so all the electricity flows through the tin roof. I mean, it's like there's no. It was tough. So we leave there and grab a shower, go to the hotel, right, grab a shower, hop on a plane, fly home, land in Newark, drive up 3.5 hours, and walk directly onto the court to go coach a basketball game. So that's probably the last 30 years of my life.
How's your sleep?
Do you sleep?
Pretty shitty. Sorry.
Yeah, because I feel like your body hormonally has to be like, what is going on? Hitting all these time zones and flights.
I get better at it. Your body does adjust a little bit, but I sleep all on the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's okay. Yeah, there's some cool stuff about it. There's, I always tell people like Australia, I love going to Australia. I just hate going to Australia. After 16 hours in a steel tube. Yeah. Like you get a little punchy. Your third meal with United. It's like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good here.
Does GE have competitors in terms of wind turbines and solar?
Yep.
In this country?
Yep. So we're the only U.S. wind turbine manufacturer.
Okay.
Competitors from Denmark is Vestas, real good competitor. You've probably heard of Siemens. They're a little bit like GE. They're in everything. So they've got a wind business. They got a gas turbine business. They got a medical business. I'm sure there are a bunch of other things I don't know. So yeah, those are the two biggest ones. And then there's a lot of local competitors. There's in China, which at one point there were 89 competitors. 89. So we exited China.
What? Okay, so people, they need to take action and consider what they can do, in their lives, even if they're just moving the needle a little bit to cleaner energy and less emissions and helping with the environment. Like if you had to give people advice on just their day-to-day, like realistic changes they can make, what would you say?
Yeah. First, I wouldn't give anybody advice, but I'll give you some ideas.
Ideas, okay.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of simple things, right? And and again, this will the simple things of recycling and stuff, which we all do. I think just doing that actually matters. And even in our industry, it matters. We have these big fiberglass blades, and how do we recycle them and make sure that you've got kind of a 360 view of what you do, right? So what you said it earlier, I think, Paul, that with batteries, right? What happens at the end of life? Well, being conscious about making sure that that the end isn't worse than what you did. Yeah. Meaning that I take a bunch of nickel cadmium or zinc cadmium and dump it in a landfill so it gets in the water for the benefit of 20 years of batteries. It's like, it can't really be the outcome. That's like but I think, at a personal level, look, if you like EVs, get an EV. If you like solar, get solar. But I also think, the stupid things of, the thermostats that are, sensitive to time, they'll save you money. And, I always think the most practical thing you could tell somebody is, how about you save yourself some money and help the environment? Mm-hmm. And it's like, hey, do you really need your thermostat at 78 in the winter? Like, can you at least turn it down at night? Do you need the air conditioning at 12 degrees? I do, but, but like when you're not there. So, that stupid investment of a eco thermometer, things like that. I think, more sophisticated ways, when you look at your purchase of energy, you can actually purchase renewable energy. So with your utility, you probably have a choice. Mm-hmm. Then you can, sometimes it's $1 a month, sometimes it's free, but you can make a choice of your supplier. Probably the most important thing is just be involved in the it's not somebody else's, it's ours. Yeah. It's like, hey, you don't have to give up being in a gym and doing what you guys love to go out and put solar panels on a roof, to make a difference, right? But, you just be involved in the community. I mean, what's the decisions you make? I mean, even think about your place here. What's your alternatives for energy? Do you have any? And have you looked at it? Can you, can I actually save money and keep the lights on and keep my business going and maybe do it in a more, socially conscious way? So I don't think you have to do a ton. I think it's, let's say, be thoughtful, participate, be open to change. Mm-hmm. World's, like I said, there's some cool technologies coming that, like I said, we'll all be driving EVs in 15 years.
Yeah, just think about, tech change is crazy to think about. Just think about the internet to phones to what there is now. How in such a short period of time?
Well, yeah, and I was talking to a kid earlier, like using that analogy about like, VHS to DVD to Blu-ray to streaming.
Yeah.
Like VHS was around for a long time.
Yeah.
DVD and Blu-ray was around for a very short period of time. Like you could still get them and whatnot, but like the amount that people use them is very small. And it went to streaming pretty quickly.
Yep.
And like, so the same thing kind of happens with other things as well.
Yeah.
And that's, technology and, everything else that leads to that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the idea that we're sitting here doing a podcast, like if this keeps up, I might have to do something on Twitter. I mean, and this is from a guy who used to hold the antennas with foil on them for my dad. The remote control was me.
Yeah.
He had 4 channels. It's like, hey, turn on channel 2. Okay, click.
Yeah. I remember sitting close to my TV so I could switch the channel because I'd be like, my mom would be like, get it so far away from the TV. You're too close. And I'd be like, yeah, but I can't change the channel then when it's a commercial.
Yeah. Yeah. But replacing your appliance with energy efficient stuff. And, there's rebates and stuff. I mean, if you go on your utility website today, I guarantee there's incentives to do something you're not doing that'll pay off in a year.
Yeah.
Whether it's for your business or whether for your home. And honestly, it's cool stuff. One of the things I always tell people, I might be the old guy, but I don't want to be old.
Right.
The last thing you want to do is have, technology pass you by. I mean, I've played PS5 with the boys and they kick my butt at, Madden or, golf, but it's like.
Don't have to admit to that.
Yeah. It'll make them feel better about themselves. Yeah. But, it's like, part of just staying with the technology, and I think that's, one of the things if you're not in technology or if you're not, it's like how do you push yourself to make sure you kind of remain relevant, contemporary,
Yeah. No, that's definitely a good point. And I mean, even like today, I was talking just, staying up with technology about like TVs, and one of our clients in here trying to help him, figure out, switching over from having cable to like a streaming service and like getting a smart TV and I could see like almost like the sparks going off, like, what are you talking about type thing. I literally told him, I was like, dude, if you get a new TV, just call me. I will literally come to your house and help you set it up. And then once I do it, you'll be like, wow, that was actually not that hard. And it's just like little things like that, like between that and then, like you said, participate. Like when you said that, I immediately, for some reason, I thought about people that don't want to participate in something like this are like the people that sat in class and all you had to do is participate to get an A.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have to actually do anything but participate, and they don't want to do it. Like that's what I thought of in my head. I don't know why. It just popped in my head, maybe because I work with like high school and middle school athletes that come out to my head. But it's like all you got to do is participate. And when I think of like you saying that, I get an email from National Grid, right, with my bill on it. I'm sure if I look at the email instead of just like, oh, delete, I know what this is what I got to pay. Cool, done. Like if I looked at it, I could probably see on there like, oh, you could save money if you switch to this, or you switch to this. And it's just like one of those things, okay, having somebody in the industry tell me, hey, these little things, it's kind of like, hey, just pay attention to them. Maybe you can save yourself some money.
Spend an hour a year.
Yeah.
It's not, they make it fairly simple for you.
Yeah.
There's a certain member of my family that well, we nickname her 12 o'clock. Because, the VCRs that just sit there and flash 12 o'clock.
Because you don't want to set the time.
You don't want to set the
time. So you don't want to set the time.
That's real.
That's like one of my pet peeves.
So if you guys rat me out, or if she listens to this, you tell them you made me say that.
I'll ask her. I'm like, hey, this clock's blinking over here. Power went out last night.
Although she's got every iPhone, iPad, whatever. So she's not that bad. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like you said, so you got to pick out somebody in the family.
Exactly. Yeah. Without that, it makes it less than that entertainment value.
Exactly. Exactly. So, there's cool stuff out there.
Yeah. How much do you? I'm just taking a complete different turn right here. How much do you? Because when I'm trying to detour from political conversations in here, as of late or the past few months, it's revolved around gas prices.
Yeah.
How much do you understand variables that are affecting that?
Yeah.
And if you could, because I feel like when that conversation goes and people get political and, blame Biden this, Biden that, and I want to speak to the other side of the coin, I don't feel like I'm educated enough to do that.
Yeah, and it's, sometimes we can be guilty of wanting to be part of the world, but not, meaning that, like, the reason that gas prices are up is there's, like, so many different things. First is we probably have pulled back on the ability to go frack or, get oil or gas out of the ground in the United States, right? We pulled that back.
Why have we pulled that back?
Different administrations, different goals, and also just the price. There's if it costs you $20 to train somebody and they're only willing to pay 15, they can, you're probably not going to do that. And that's kind of actually how it was that simple. It's like when the gas prices got so low, whether it's natural gas or oil, they got so low, it didn't justify the investment anymore. Mm-hmm. So people pull back and you go through these weird cycles. Again, without getting it, like when 2005 gas prices, natural gas, $15 a million BTU, immense. I mean, just huge. Mm-hmm. It was like $1.50, 3 years ago. So when it dropped to $1.50, people's willingness to invest just changed, right? So you take that and you say, okay, there's a lack of investment. This is from more opinion than fact, but the Saudis decide they like higher prices, so they start to squeeze, production back, right, in order to keep the price higher, right? Supply and demand. The Ukraine war, all of a sudden, somebody else will pay more for natural gas, so natural gas goes, instead of it being consumed here in the United States, somebody will build an export terminal and you'll take it to Europe to go replace all the gas that they lost because of the war in Russia. So, like on a natural gas basis, and even a petroleum gas, right? There's just a lot of dynamics inside of it, and there's anybody thinks that that Joe Biden raised prices. I mean,
that's where I hear people say that, and I'm like, that's not true, right? Like that's not true. But then I have nothing to come to the table with.
Yeah. But you just think about it very simply. There's got to be enough. Prices have to be high enough for people to invest. Mm-hmm. And if prices go too low, people stop investing, and eventually prices go back up because people didn't invest. Right? There is a little.
It's like a stock.
Exactly.
That's all it is. It's like a stock. It's like
supply demand.
Stock goes down, people are like, oh, I'm gonna get out of this. Stock goes up, people are like, oh, I should be in this. It's the same type of thing with gas, and I think that's a good analogy to use, especially if we have that conversation with Jim. Like, it's more like a stock than it is one person making any sort of decision.
Yep. And think about the economy too. I mean, during COVID, right? Everybody was driving less. Mm-hmm. So again, why would you put more oil or gas into the world when nobody really needed it? Now, as the economy's rebounded and actually stronger than it was, you don't have the supply, so prices go up. And so some of it, because I think about the same stuff. It's like, why is inflation where it is? Right. We were actually having this conversation at dinner last night. Like, why is inflation where it is? I'm like, well, some of it's you pumped a bunch of money in the economy and people spent it. Mm-hmm. They drove up prices, right? Right. And then there's 1,000 other things that nobody wants to talk about because they're fairly complicated. Listen, I'm not bright enough to explain. I'm not an economist. Not even sure I want to be one. But
I wouldn't mind.
Yeah. I'm in a complicated enough world. I'm trying to simplify life, not make it more complicated. But I think the other part of that is, if you're looking for a scapegoat, right? It's always easy to find somebody to blame. It's just, I think ask people to just go look and say, hey, just if you do 5 minutes of research, you can find 30% of the explanation. Mm-hmm. It's just whether you're willing to do that or just, kind of say, repeat what you think, and just stick with your beliefs regardless of any alternative set of facts.
Or only do the research that supports your beliefs. That type of stuff. Or read an article and only read the part that supports it, but then don't talk about the part that didn't support it. Like those are the things that get me all the time. Is when I see somebody will cite something, right, and they only cite the part that backs up what they're saying. But then if you actually go to the article or the journal, whatever it is that they're pulling from, and you read the whole thing, by the time you get to the end, the conclusion does not support the thing that they said. It actually counters what they said. And then when you're like, oh, okay, this person's, just, framing it so it looks like this, then it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. And you guys talked about EVs before. I mean, I'm not sure I know the answer, but, what's a replacement battery going to cost? Mm-hmm. I know the technology of batteries. I mean, the cost of a battery is just falling off a cliff. Mm-hmm. I'm not positive of the reliability. And if an engine lasts 15 years, right? You do regular maintenance and you don't have any problem. Is a battery going to cost you $4,000? It possibly could. Mm-hmm. So lease the car. Put that risk on somebody. You know what I mean? It's right. It's like, I don't know. I'm not really sure I'm smart enough, and I know battery technology advances, but I'm not sure that the battery I want is actually going to be available when the time I need it, right? Because the technology is moving so fast. So lease it, put it on somebody else. And if then I'm not saying they're wrong, because I don't know enough, but I also look at it and say, okay, if I look at, gas at $5, right, or $4, that battery could be wicked expensive before I care.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? And it's like, does anybody even just sit down and do the simple math and say, hey, look, I'm not gonna, I drive 100 miles a week, that's 20 gallons or two, whatever it is, do the math, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there resources out there that you would push people to if they just want to learn more about like renewable energy or actions, like the steps that they can take to make small changes?
Yeah, not so much on the consumer side. So if you want to learn more about the industry, you said earlier, American Clean Power, there's a lot of stuff about education on renewables. Solar industry, it's SCIA is the solar industry. Again, tons of resources there. I mean, you can go on certain people's websites and you can actually calculate the radiance of your house, which is how good is the sun. So if you want to figure out solar panels, you can actually just, in 15 minutes, you can figure out, is my house even candidate for it?
So I can tell you on one side of my apartment and the other, or condo, whatever you want to call it, and on the other side, one side definitely gets way more than the other. It's just the way the sun goes,
Yeah, and it's how much, but then utilities have a ton of resources. I mean, every one of them has resources about, things that are out there. They got solar programs. Every utility has a website of alternative suppliers of energy. So there's a ton out there. It's spend an hour and you can learn a heck of a lot and might do some cool things.
Yeah. So we're not fucked, are we? We can make enough change to help the climate and prevent the total final disaster.
No, we're all good. We're all good. Just when you live in technology, right? A couple things we didn't talk about, but there's investments right now about carbon capture. So the idea that carbon comes out of the ground, right? So the idea that you can actually capture it out of a smokestack, and condense it, harden it, put it into an aquifer, or not an aquifer, into a cave, right? There's so there's direct air capture, which is so there's all kinds of technologies out there. There's hydrogen. I was bet on science. It just making sure we all have the political will and the personal will to do something different. But I think we'll be, I think it doesn't mean we're not going to have a crisis,
before that. But you think in the long run will be. Yeah. And I think betting on science is, just look at everything.
Look at everything. Yeah.
Look at literally everything. Yeah. It's pretty much. If I was going to do it, I'd put my money on science.
Yeah, I bet on science. I don't know who I want to. We didn't talk about how Paul helps your competitors in your fantasy football league.
Yeah.
We didn't get into that, Paul.
Listen, if you want some help, I'm willing to help.
I'm 8-0 in the Canadian.
Steve, I had zero doubt that you could. I knew you could because every time that I go to try that, a certain somebody tries to tell me to pick somebody up that she's going, I'm going to pick this person up. I'd say 9 out of 10 times you picked them up. So I'm like, well, you know what? You got to go home and take that up with him.
Yeah. She came home and she said, "You picked that up," and I was going to get like, all right, I'll release it.
The one time,
choose your paths.
It's just easier.
There was one time she was like, he picked him up and we just had a conversation about him last night. And I told him I was going to pick him up.
Shout out Harrison Bucker.
Yeah, shout out Harrison Bucker. He's part of Novice, so that's pretty cool.
I actually forgot about that. So she comes home and she says, hey, I thought I told you this. I'm like, yeah, you probably did. Here, you can have it.
I travel a lot. My brain wasn't here. Yeah. It was still in Singapore.
Yeah. I stayed married a lot because I just think that I was wrong, regardless of the subject. Sometimes
that's what you got to do.
It's okay.
Or more time.
It's all good. No wishes.
Yeah, man. No, Steve, I appreciate you coming on tonight.
That was a blast. Thanks.
Had a lot of fun. We learned a bunch.
Definitely learned a lot.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. So thanks, Steve. I'm sure we'll hit it up again at some point.
No, great. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. Everybody, we'll see everyone next time. Thank you.